What does geometry have to do with business success? Now, I have a confession to make. I know nothing about geometry. I actually took it as a course in high school, in summer school, after my sophomore year so that I could just get it over with. And once I got my passing grade, I have not thought about geometry since then, until about 10 years ago. And that's when I realized that geometry has a concept that could be used to uncover your biggest roadblocks and increase your breakthroughs towards success. So let's start with a definition. This is boring, but geometry is defined as a branch of mathematics concerned with the questions of shape and size and relative position of figures and the properties of space. No wonder I could care less about it. Plane geometry is all about flat shapes like lines and circles and squares, things that can be drawn on a piece of paper. And there's one shape in particular that you can pay attention to actually help you create faster success in business. And that shape is what I would call the 80-20 square. Now, this square relates to the theory of constraints, and the theory of constraints is basically a management philosophy of continuous improvement. Basically what it says is that you improve by identifying and managing the weakest constraint that you have that affects your productivity or your ability to reach your goals. Now, 20% of the constraints, or think of them as roadblocks, that you personally experience can be found outside of yourself. They're things you have no control over, like the economy or the competition or the marketplace. And since you have no control, those are things you just don't need to be bothered with because you can't do anything about them. The other three sides of the square are really where you need to focus, because that is where 80% of your roadblocks can be found. These are generally constraints or roadblocks that you have created within yourself. And so if you've created them yourself, then you can solve them yourself. So the theory of constraints would basically say that you need to focus all of your energy on fixing your biggest constraint, because if you can fix that, it will make the biggest difference in your business or in your life. And once that constraint is fixed, you can then move on to the next one. So my belief is that for most people, your biggest constraint is somehow traced to the faith that you have in your own ability. Now, I'm not talking about self-confidence, because there's a lot of people who have a great deal of self-confidence, yet underneath it all, they really don't have great faith in their ability. And as a result, their success is a little bit shaky. So the question becomes, how do you determine what your constraints are? There's basically 3 steps. You need to identify the constraint, you need to study the constraint, and then you need to define the constraint. And it's usually within that process that you can figure out what the solution is and really make some real breakthroughs. So in order to accomplish those things, here's the questions that you need to start asking yourself. And I will put these questions in the description of this video, so if you don't have time to write stuff down, it will all be there. So the first thing is to identify it. Here's the question. What is the most important goal in my business that if I had faith I could achieve it, it would have the most important effect on my life? Then you've got to study it. Here's a few questions to ask here. Why haven't I reached that goal yet? What stops me from doing what I need to do to reach that goal? What is truly holding me back? And why is my faith in that area so shaky? Lastly, you need to define it. Here's the questions for that. What factors determine how fast I'm able to move from where I am now to where I want to go? Now, these are not questions that you're just gonna sit at your desk or sit in your car and answer really easily. They take a lot of time and a lot of self-reflection to figure out, but in the end, it is so incredibly worth it. I've talked about putting down thinking time on your calendar, and these are great questions to ask yourself in that thinking time. Because the belief and the picture that you paint in your head of yourself has a massive impact on whether you see success or not. Here's a quick example. When my youngest daughter was 5 years old and my older daughter was 10, they used to do a lot of cartwheels together in the backyard. Now, the 5-year-old was convinced that she did a perfect cartwheel. You couldn't have told her any different. Now, her cartwheel actually resembled nothing like a cartwheel that I've ever seen, but she had in her mind that she was absolutely perfect at this cartwheel. Now, meanwhile, my older daughter also was doing cartwheels, was a bit better, but she knew what a perfect cartwheel looked like, and she picked apart her ability like crazy. She also would tell her younger sister how horrible her cartwheels were. So one had a picture of a perfect cartwheel that she thought she was doing. The other one had a picture of a not great cartwheel. So what was the result? The result was the 5-year-old practiced and practiced her cartwheels because she already thought she was doing it well and she was just having fun. The older one got a little frazzled about her cartwheels, thought she was terrible at it, so she didn't do it as much. So guess who had the better cartwheel in the end? The 5-year-old. So you've got to ask yourself, what is the picture that you're painting in your mind? Is it one of success? Is it one of picking apart every single thing you do wrong? You don't need to be a mathematical genius to figure out how to really affect your constraints and fix them. All you need to do is look at these questions, think a little bit about geometry, and really build your faith. Now, in the meantime, of course, remember to laugh a lot and learn a lot. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel.